Kled is back in a great spot due to his buff. Rek'Sai changes have landed her in a pretty weak spot, while Yunara has actually turned out to be one of the more balanced releases that we have seen in a while. So we've got all this and more to cover in today's video as we provide you guys with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role in 25.15. And let's be honest, picking the best champions is fun, but is that really enough on its own? I don't know about you, but locking in Jarvan just because he's OP tier doesn't really help if you're lacking knowledge on how to jungle efficiently. However, you can begin stomping your way out of low elo by utilizing our extensive catalog of jungle courses that are going to teach you everything you need to know to succeed as a jungler, which will have you speedrunning any game below Diamond in no time. And that's just for jungle. Your mid lane OP tier Diana pick becomes actually unstoppable when you know all the essentials of mid lane thanks to the new 6-part mid lane series over on our platform that our top 10 challenger player Strumpist has tirelessly worked on exclusive to our members. Our tier list gets you the right champions, SkillCapped gets you the right skills. And we're so confident it works, if you don't climb 5 divisions while actively using the platform, you literally don't pay a single cent. So why hold yourself back this season and finally get the rank you deserve? And with that being said, let's get into it. So one of the bigger winners from 25.15 and the only champ who has actually buffed this patch is Kled. Kled saw his passive scaling buffed so that the more health you purchase, the more resists you now receive. This buff has led to Kled's win rate jumping up a whole 3%, so it's proving to be incredibly impactful. Something that would boost Kled's analytical showing even more is if players would run the correct rune setup. For the longest time, Conqueror was the best keystone rune for Kled, but because he likes to stack so much health in his build now, taking Grasp for the keystone works way better. Grasp heals you and deals damage based on your bonus health, so the synergy it has with Kled's meta build is great. You've got two main setups going around right now on Kled, as there's a more teamfight focused build and a better split push setup. For the teamfight build, it's a Titanic Rush into Black Cleaver 2nd and Sterix Gage 3rd. And then if you want better side lane threat, Hullbreaker with Titanic Hydra and Overlord's Bloodmail is really good. So for Kled's tier list placement, he's back in a really strong spot due to the 25.15 buff, and we'll be moving him up to the top lane S tier. Having a look at the top lane tier list, Warwick will remain in OP as one of the most powerful champs in the game for 25.15. So Riot actually did it. They made an already weak champ even more depressing as the Illaoi adjustments ended up dropping her win rate. We noted in the pre-patch tier list that we thought there would be no way Riot would issue changes that would nerf Illaoi, considering she's been a B tier pick for a while, but that's what's played out. It's almost as if Riot's way too careful nowadays with how they try to buff champions. Illaoi has been B tier for months now, and instead of just giving her a flat out buff that would make her more competitive, they issue adjustments that take power off in certain places and give power back in other spots, but it doesn't end up making her any better. And if the buffs end up missing the mark, then just issue a hotfix nerf to fix it. They've done that a ton in the past, so it just doesn't make a lot of sense as to why they're so scared of trying to make weak champions good. There was actually a really good post from MidBeast a few days ago where he talked about how League is just too balanced now. We definitely don't entirely agree with him that there should be completely broken things like 99% ban rate Kassadin, but there should be more meaningful changes each patch that actually shift the meta in a more drastic way. What do you guys think of this? It just feels like patch after patch, Riot issues these very minor buffs and nerfs that aren't exciting at all, and even dating back to just last season, it felt like the patches were so much more impactful. I think Nemesis's follow-up comment to MidBeast's post really sums it up well, as the game is just too bland lately. No new item changes, no new runes, just minor champion changes patch after patch, which makes the game less exciting over time if you're not actually experiencing anything new. So that was a bit of a rant there, but definitely let us know what you guys think in the comments. Is the game too balanced now? Do you want bigger patches with more meaningful changes, or do you like the recent approach that Riot has taken and being extremely careful with how they buff and nerf champions and issuing no new item or rune changes at all? So Riot stated in the patch notes that their goal with Rek'Sai changes were to make her stronger than before, but they totally missed the mark on the changes. In pre-patch from the tests that we performed, it did actually look like Rek'Sai would be gaining power for this patch, but the changes to E and reduction in armor has actually hurt her clear. E used to have max health damage, but now it has a bonus AD ratio, so when clearing camps you feel that one a ton. Later game, Rek'Sai is definitely better now, but for a champion who's way more reliant on snowballing early on to be more effective, a nerf to her clear is going to outweigh later game compensation. Rek'Sai's struggles in 25.15 are also tied into people just building her wrong, as 20% of players are still going lethality, and then the majority of players are rushing Stridebreaker. What's actually working the best though is a Titanic Hydra rush into Spear of Shojin 2nd. So with how Rek'Sai has landed in 25.15, we definitely wouldn't be surprised to see Riot issue some buffs for next patch, as she's going to be moved into the jungle B tier. Another jungler who has seen a pretty big nosedive in strength for 25.15 is Pantheon. Pantheon's clear speed was targeted this patch, and it's turned out to be very impactful. Similar to Rek'Sai, Pantheon is a champion who needs to be effective early on if he wants to influence games, so nerfing his clear speed just means he's not able to gank as quickly, and that has a big impact on his power for solo queue. We were optimistic the nerf wouldn't be enough to drop Panth out of the A tier, but it's hit him quite hard, so we're adjusting him down into B for mid-patch. So for the jungle tier list, as we reach the midway mark of the patch, nothing changes changes in the OP tier as we continue to rate Warwick, Trundle, and Jarvan as 3 of the most powerful champs. Besides Rek'Sai and Pantheon, 2 other junglers were changed this patch, being Bel'Veth and Master Yi, but their nerfs didn't actually do a whole lot. It's kinda strange, but Bel'Veth actually gained win rate for 25.15. Q was nerfed, but passive attack speed was buffed, so it's looking like the passive buff has actually outweighed the Q nerf. As a result, we're going to be moving Bel'Veth back into the jungle S tier for mid-patch. And then for Master Yi, he did see a small drop off in win rate for this patch, but nothing that's turned him into a bad pick, so he's being placed in the jungle A tier. So for the mid lane this patch, we saw no changes that directly influenced the role, which means there aren't any adjustments being made to the tier list. There is a new Annie setup that has become really popular among pro players recently though, and it consists of taking Phase Rush for the Keystone rune. Being a shorter ranged mage, Phase Rush actually has really good use for Annie and helps her reposition in fights. You've got to get up close to use your combo, so after you've done that, getting the movement speed proc from Phase Rush to help kite around and back away if enemies are trying to get onto you is great. Phase Rush currently has a higher win rate than Electrocute on Annie for solo queue, so it's not like it's just pro players that are finding success with it. Our challenger mid lane, Shori, has a new full game commentary where he's playing a Phase Rush Annie, so you can see how the setup is supposed to function from that game. So with Yunara now being on live servers for a few weeks, she's probably been one of the more balanced releases we've seen in a while. What's actually quite interesting as well is that we're seeing on-hit rush items performing much better than crit right now. Yuntal is the most popular rush item for Yunara, and on 2 items it will offer up the most DPS potential, but it is weaker early on in the game. Blade of the Ruined King and Kraken Slayer are currently outperforming Yuntal analytically, and another reason for this is definitely due to the fact that both items have a much smoother build path than Yuntal does. The thing about Yuntal is that you need a BF sword in order to build into it. So if you're forced into a base timer early on to where you have something like 1200 gold and are just a bit off BF sword, having to go into Scout Slingshot and a long sword just feels really bad. With Kraken or Blade of the Ruined King, you can grab more impactful components so your power in lane is better. So if you haven't tried Kraken or Blade of the Ruined King rush on Yunara yet, then definitely give it a go for 25.15 if you're forced into a base timer where you have less than 1300 gold. We think that if built correctly, Yunara is in a pretty good spot right now, so she will continue to be placed in the ADC A tier. So for the ADC tier list, we've got Cog, Vayne, and Sivir leading the way as 3 of the best carries of the patch. It was just Neela and Corki who were directly changed for 25.15, and the adjustments didn't really achieve much at all. Neela is still a very niche but powerful ADC, and the nerfs did not push her out of an S tier spot. Corki adjustments actually ended up landing pretty neutral. We showed you guys in the pre-patch tier list how the Q changes were nerfs throughout the early to mid game, but R did end up getting buffed, so it's looking like the R change has actually helped to lessen the blow of the Q nerfs. Even though R damage buff was very light, you do have multiple charges of the spell, so if you're able to land them consistently, the small buff can add up to being more of a medium-sized buff. As a result, we'll be giving Corki a push back into B tier for mid-patch, still relatively weak, but not on Ezreal or Kalista level of weak. For support in 25.15, we've started to see a pretty big shift in priority away from melee supports and over to enchanters. 3 melee supports were nerfed this patch, being Braum, Rel, and Alistar. Braum and Rel still remain pretty good pickups, but Alistar is definitely on the outside looking in, as he's now the lowest win rate melee support in solo queue. So in terms of melee support priority for 25.15, Leona is now a bit above the likes of Rel and Braum, while Maokai is a pretty underrated option. The OP tier for support is going to be solely made up of enchanters, as we've got Melio, Nami, and Lulu as the best picks. With Yunara being picked a ton right now after her release, along with those melee supports becoming weaker, enchanter value is just really good right now. Even dropping down into the S tier, picks like Soraka, Sona, and Janna are all very strong options at the moment. It's really only Karma and Yuumi who are performing more poorly right now. So there's definitely value to being able to play both enchanters and melee supports in this current meta. With Kai'Sa being played at a pretty high rate right now, having a Rel, Leona, or Maokai to pull out is going to be really valuable. Vice versa, if your ADC wants to play Yunara, Vayne, Kog'Maw, or Jinx, then locking in any enchanter who's S tier or higher is going to suit you really well. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit skillcapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, that was a quick update to the solo queue tier list for 25.15, as this was a pretty light patch overall. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.